What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/MaliciousCompliance.
This story's called, "Want me to go on call even though it takes me hours to travel to and from work and I'm a casual employee? No problem." This happened about 12 months ago. I'm a nurse and work in a relatively specialized field. Due to previous financial difficulties, I had taken on a number of additional jobs in the previous few years and had settled on one that was particularly good for me. I was employed casually in a smaller 6-bedded unit in a private hospital. Because of the nature of my specialty, this particular area required 2 nurses in attendance at all times. 2 nurses to 6 patients is a dream ratio, and virtually unheard of in private health. To combat this, most hospitals that have beds for this particular specialty area combine them with another ward so they can staff us down and allow the regular nurses to cover us. However, for some reason, this hospital had located the beds completely separate to any other unit. This meant they had no choice to safely staff us but to roster 2 nurses on at all times. And our manager stood her ground and refused to budge on that requirement. Basically, I was casually employed. There was always the possibility that my hours could be cut or shifts canceled at any time. However, because they needed both nurses present at all times, they could not do that, even if we had no patients in this particular specialty area. They had to keep 2 nurses available just in case we needed to admit. If we had no patients at all, some nurses would go on call. But because I relied on public transport or bicycle commuting to get to work, my manager understood that I could not go on call because I could not return to the workplace in a reasonable time, and instead I would be sent to help out in other areas. Our manager had, in addition to her other duties, become the project lead on a large expansion within our facility and had performed very well in the role. So well, in fact, that when another facility under the same company was expanding, she was headhunted to lead their expansion project as well. She was compelled to a secondment that would require her to live out of state for several months, and as a result, we would be given a new acting manager. To our dismay, we discovered that the acting manager was from a ward where it was well known that the staff could not stand her. Sure enough, within days, she began doing things like canceling our staff and moving her surplus staff into our area when she was low on numbers and overstaffed, costing them to us, even though they lacked the appropriate training and experience to work in our area. Anything to make her budget look better, which at the same time made our budget look worse. It all came to a head one morning when, after 2 hours of a 12-hour shift, we discharged our last patient. I was literally on the phone finalizing the patient discharge when our acting manager called the other nurse on the shift and instructed both of us to clock out immediately and go on call. Confused, I rang her back. "Hi, assistant manager, it's OP. I just got a message saying that you want us to clock out and go home. You may not be aware, although our previous manager was, but I take public transport to and from work. I can't be on call."
"That doesn't matter. You have no patients. I can't pay for you to be in the ward doing nothing, and no other areas require help today."
Ignore that voice crack.
"I need you to go off clock and go home."
Are you sure? We are halfway through checking the emergency trolley. There is a massive pile of follow-up calls to make, and we haven't even stripped the patient room yet.
"That doesn't matter. Bring me your phone and keys and clock off."
What are you going to do if there's an admission? It'll take me over an hour to get back.
"Well, I'll sit there until you can get back."
I was fuming. The other nurse began resealing the emergency trolley, and I stopped her. We had been instructed to leave, and leave we would. I marched the phone and keys to our acting manager and handed them over. As I did so, she said,
"You can't be paid to sit and make phone calls. That has to be done when you have patients."
I replied, "We are busy with the patients when we have patients. Besides, it's only just past 9 a.m., and most of the follow-up calls are to families with children who are busy doing school runs. I wouldn't answer a call from an unknown number before 9 a.m. I handed the keys over, clocked off, and began the journey home. I hadn't reached home before I got a message from my other workplace, asking for a nurse for the night shift and offering an overtime payment. Now, I was booked for a day shift at my second job the next day, and I knew we had no theater cases booked, which meant the likelihood of that shift being canceled was also high. I couldn't afford to sit at home waiting for work if we didn't have patients, but just to be sure, I gave the union a quick call, and they managed to illuminate something wonderful. As a casual employee, I was not entitled to be on call at all. That meant not only could they not ask me to be on call, I was not entitled to the measly $26 allowance that permanent employees received. As soon as I had clocked out, my shift had ended. Armed with that knowledge, I rang my acting manager and informed her that I had been offered paying work that night and, as a consequence, would need to cancel my shift the following day. She was quite hostile, asking,
Do you normally cancel work here to work elsewhere?
I replied, I don't normally have my shifts canceled at all, but I'm not a charity and cannot sit at home unpaid when I could be paid to work elsewhere. I have a family to support. After this call, I sent a quick email to my usual manager outlining the acting manager's request and why I had left the ward disorganized, the emergency trolley unsealed, and a stack of work not done, and went to bed to have a nap. I was awoken at approximately 16:15 in the morning by my wife, looking confused. My acting manager had rung and left a message with her that we were admitting a patient and she required me back at work. I was bemused. The acting manager should not have even been there at that time of the afternoon, and clearly lacked the stones to call me directly. No matter, I rang the hospital supervisor. Hi, it's OP. I just got a message via my wife that I'm a bit confused about. Apparently there is a patient and you want me to come into work for a shift? That's right. We're admitting you to your area. We need you back in. You know my shift was canceled, right? The assistant manager told me you were on call. Well, I can't be on call. I'm a casual employee. My shift was canceled. Besides, the time I've dressed, packed, got on my bicycle, ridden half an hour to my nearest train station, caught the train, changed to a tram, then walked the rest of the way, then showered and changed. It'll be, quick check of the time, 18:30. My shift was meant to end at 19:30. I don't think I'm gonna be much help to you. I heard the sound of the phone being covered and a muffled voice, before shouting and ranting began in the background. It was my acting manager, still clearly there and clutching her pearls about how unreasonable it was it would take 2 hours for me to return to work. As the ranting continued, I spoke on the phone again. Supervisor, it's OP. I know you have acting manager shouting at you in the background, but right now I'm the person you need to be listening to because I called you. Acting manager is well aware of how long it takes me to return to work because I told her this morning. She knew when she asked me to clock off that I would not be returning to work. I'm sorry that she gave you the impression that I could be on call, but I cannot. Now, as I am not able to assist you any further, and I am not on the clock, I will be ending this conversation. And I put the phone down. I got a couple of confused texts about why I wasn't working the next day and whatever had happened on the ward from the night staff when they arrived and began resealing the emergency trolley and arranging for after-hours bed cleans. I had a week off after that. Unfortunately, this particular manager appears to be Teflon coated, but I've never had a shift canceled since. People don't listen and then they get mad at you for what they didn't listen to. That's life. This story's called, Get Told to Clean Up My Mess? Absolutely! Just make sure to clean up yours. So last year, I worked in a corporate cell phone carrier store. It was basically my personal hell because I like to help people and take care of customers, and I don't like to intentionally screw people over with bad products. Background: this particular week, I had a regular customer come in every month like clockwork because when I had started at the store, he came in and asked me to set him up for a service I advised him against. Long story short, he's about 1,000 years old and tried to sign up for a notoriously difficult to cancel streaming service we provided. When we went to cancel it, he promptly forgot all the info we used to set up the accounts and got charged for it for like half a year. Anyways, I was in the back office asking my manager what I could do for him. I felt bad for the guy. He's ancient, and while insisted on getting that service set up despite my protests, he didn't deserve to get charged for something he couldn't use for half a year. My manager, who didn't like to do anything positive for anyone unless there was a sale in it, told me,
It's your mess, OP. His account got screwed up on your watch. Now go fix it.
Now, I have a very strong work ethic. I clean up my own messes, I fix my own problems, and I detest having to ask for help. So this comment definitely set me on edge, knowing that my manager had whatever the opposite of a work ethic is. Several hours later, my grumpy customer had left. coming to the same conclusion we had over the last couple of months. My company had basically stolen $200 from him, and nobody with any power was willing to give it back. I was idling on the sales floor, stewing over my manager's comments, when a sweet little old lady comes in. I ask her why she's in there, and she's surprised by a recurring bill she's gotten for the last 2 months for that same streaming service. I've worked with this particular little lady before. She had her 80th birthday in the Devonian period. The closest thing she owned to a smartphone was her Nokia 3310. There's no reason this woman should have ever had this service. That's when I find out that my manager and another employee railroaded yada yada and otherwise just tricked this poor woman into getting this service. I know them. She had been in there to pay her bill. They told her they were going to reduce it, gave her some insignificant discount on her phone bill, and had her sign all the stuff to get on that crap service. I was furious. I already hated that I was expected to screw people over for a nice commission, but this was outright fraud. So I went back to the manager's office and tell her, hey, there's a customer here having gotten signed up for blank TV now, despite the fact that it's not even a service she could use since she doesn't have a computer or a smartphone.
Oh, can you tell her she can go to X website to cancel it?
I mean, I would, but she has no way to even get to the website, and she doesn't have an email to even sign up for the service in the first place, which is really odd.
Well, could you go help her cancel it?
I'm sorry, I'm still cleaning up that mess with my other customer. You know, she did mention that it was you and coworker that helped her before this started up.
Could you get
coworker too? He's not scheduled today. You could help her, or if you're too busy, I could give her regional manager's phone number. Note, we had lost our district manager at the time because of a lot of fraud on his account. Regional manager was basically acting as our district manager and did not like having to deal with any issue made by store manager.
I guess I could go out and help her.
Yeah, I guess you could. Don't ever do this again. She ended up helping the customer. She was stuck for the whole day trying to fix her screw up, and then had to work with that same little old lady month after month because that service was a nightmare for even us to cancel. It could only be canceled through a web chat, and you needed every detail about the account to kill it, including the BS email my manager made up and forgot to make the account in the first place. Sorry there's no great comeuppance like her getting fired. She still works at that store, I think, but the entire time I worked there, I successfully policed her most unscrupulous sales practices and kept her from doing this again. Now, this is something to appreciate, a salesperson not willing to screw you over for a pretty penny, which I must say is not very common. Yeah, people suck. Corporations are scummy. What's new? This story's called No Promotion Equals Less Work, Same Pay. I work for a passenger boat company. We have 3 tasks while on board: secure the boats for embarking and disembarking, keep an eye out for safety and order, and check tickets and issue fines. A few years ago, the company asked some of the senior staff to temporarily switch over to ticket inspector for high season, with the promise to move permanently within a year. Inspectors get a higher pay, and they only do one task, which is checking tickets and issuing fines, a thing that we are already required to do. So many of us say yes, gladly. At the end of the season, our reps contact us and say that we have performed well, so the company is having an examination for our promotion. We say we were assured we would be promoted no matter what. Meanwhile, there's a batch of recent hires who have personal ties with the union and the higher-ups. They aren't very happy with their working conditions. It's a rather tough job, especially in the winter or in bad weather. And they often find ways to be dispensed from service, or apply for desk jobs and easily obtain them, even if unnecessary or redundant. Now, we don't have much choice, so we agreed to the exam, and surprise, surprise, pretty much nobody makes the cut. They had to promote 2 because they knew they got perfect scores, despite the exam being for a job that some of us have been doing for decades. At this point, the company has no choice but to look for qualified people among the more recent hires. And wouldn't you know, pretty much all of those who belong to that category immediately pass. Now, the key detail. After we were failed, we were notified with a letter saying we were unfit for the duties of ticket inspector. The malicious compliance. We took those words to a letter, and we stopped performing the tasks of ticket inspectors, which had been part of our job for years. Either we are fit for a job or we are unfit. We brought our letter with us, and the first few times supervisors tried to write us up for failing to check tickets, we promptly produced our very much official dispensation. Not only did this decrease our workload immensely, letting us breeze through even the tougher shifts with ease, and generally turning our job into quite a pleasant one, but it cost the company a pretty buck in terms of lost revenue, the fines we don't issue, the greater pay gap they had to fill by using juniors instead of seniors, and the rehiring and retraining of those who still drop out of the job. Because it's still outdoor work, and some of the people they hired just weren't suited for it. Now, the supervisors don't even bother with us anymore, and I have that rejection letter in a box with other dear memories, like my old D&D character sheets. Edit. I forgot the cherry on top. A couple of months later, their timetable was modified, having them take service at 5 a.m. twice a week. There's no way I could have kept that up. I worked late shifts for most of my career. Dodge that bullet. Tricky. But it really sucks when companies don't appreciate loyalty and experience when they really should, because that's what does them good. At least in most cases, as far as I know. I'm not very experienced in these things at all, so I could be wrong.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.